Well, so I wanted to talk to you about the major dramatic question because it was pretty much a universal um, issue in your pieces, and it's a pretty universal issue in most of my fiction students' pieces as well. And over my far too many years of teaching, um, it continues to be an issue. And I think it's because a lot of writers come to prose having not gone through screenwriting or playwriting, where they will not let you get 6 feet in the door if you can't articulate what the major dramatic question of your piece is going to be, because that's the, the, the heart around which everything spins. It's the heart of dramatic writing. And so I was trying to think of ways to help reframe some of this for you. And since in our particular class we're working with Memoir, um, I think that one of the challenges might be coming up from the idea of you all not considering the notion and the importance of conflict, and also maybe having some old high school baggage around what an essay is. So we're writing an essay on frogs. There are 6 types of frogs that live in southern Arizona. The first type of frog is blah blah. The second type of frog is blah blah, and that's the way that maybe many of us first learned about the word essay. But in a memoir essay or in a personal narrative essay, the essay is very similar to a short story in terms of construction, and it's very similar to fiction in that it is exploring a central idea or a central question, a central issue of some sort. And there's an expectation of movement from the protagonist. And in a memoir, it's that protagonist is usually the author. The author is character on the page. So how is that character different in the end of the essay from the beginning? What did that journey of events that you've chosen to share with us, how did that affect the character, and what's different at the end? That's kind of this about question. When you ask somebody what a story was about, they're not going to just say the events that occurred. They're going to tell you what it meant, because they're going to intrinsically understand the meaning that was made from the journey of events. So, because I think most of you are probably more familiar with fiction and some of these classic stories, I was going to talk about a couple of things in that vein here to try to help you. So the dramatic question is called the driving question, a central question, an essential question, a major dramatic question. It's all the same thing. It's the central idea, like a thesis statement, that the whole paper or the whole essay or short story or novel is kind of revolving around. And that question centers around what the protagonist's conflict is. Um, and I'm thinking maybe some of you are not really, when you're thinking about what essays to share and what events you want to share, you're forgetting the need for conflict. So here are some examples of dramatic questions from classic literature. So, is Odysseus going to make it home from Troy? Will Romeo and Juliet ever be together? In The Old Man and the Sea, is the old man Santiago ever going to catch a fish again? In The Godfather, is Michael Corleone going to be able to save his family? In Catch 22, is Captain John Yossarian ever going to be able to make it home from World War II? So these dramatic questions are placed very early in the text to give the reader a reason to keep turning the pages. They want to find out the answer. And so it's not stated necessarily directly, hello, reader, do you think Odysseus will ever make it home from Troy? Tune in to find out. We know the journey the character is about to go on, and that journey starts to evoke that question for the reader throughout the story. So then that question is met with obstacles, with conflict. So is Odysseus going to ever make it home from Troy? So number one, no, because there's a Cyclops in the way. Number two, Odysseus and his men escaped the Cyclops, but now the cannibals are after them. 3, they avoided the cannibals, but now the sirens are after them, calling to them. So see all of these obstacles that are being placed in the way of the protagonist getting to the answer to that question, getting to the end of that journey. So it doesn't have to be a yes or no question. Sometimes we know that the murderer is person X, and the question is actually how did it happen or why did it happen. But even in your your smaller memoir pieces, there's this exploration that goes on, and that constitutes the movement in the piece. That is the journey that you're giving to the reader. So in the earlier video that I made that I posted, kind of this so what, this is connected to that. When the reader can't answer that question, there's not a dramatic question either. So It's a really important thing, and it's not something that seems to come naturally for many writers, unless they're coming from a stage or screen background. Um, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know if it's a love of I just want to put sentences on the page, or if I just want to explore events in my. I'm not really sure why it's so difficult, because it really is the heart of drama, the heart of a dramatic reading experience. And memoir certainly is a dramatic reading experience. It's not limited just to Othello or Hamlet or Prometheus or whatever is going on. There's this relationship and this intensity that's created between the writer and the text, and that intensity, that electricity that's between those two, is there because there's a question that's continuing to pull and support both the reader and the text all the way through the end. So so as you're choosing the piece that you want to look at for revision, this dramatic question idea is really the place for all of you to spend a great deal of time. And I, like most things, I find it best not to think about things so much as to write into the questions and see what emerges. So the events that you all have chosen to write about may absolutely be significant to you. But you have to clue the reader in on the significance of those events. And I think, especially when dealing with real life events, it can be challenging to remember that the reader isn't you, and that the reader doesn't have all of your background, all of your backstory, and all of the way that you see the world. The reader is someone else coming to just the text, and all they have is the text. So I think what happens frequently, and this does happen both in fiction and in memoir, that the initial drafts are really series of events. And this is, like I said, very true both in my fiction classes and in memoir. So there are these things happening. And these are doors. I think you can think of them as doors into your writing. These events bubbled up to the surface for some reason. And here I'm going to share them with you. Okay, now I'm getting feedback. I'm like, what is my dramatic question? Don't know. But there might have been some very significant reason why those events are things that you chose to share. And so write into them. Here's a couple of things that might be helpful. You can take one of your scenes and move into it very deeply and very slowly. Write 5 sentences with each of the 5 senses. Like, go into a place, maybe it's a barn or a field or a bedroom or a hotel room or whatever the setting is that is most significant in your piece. And this wouldn't make it into the final version or the revised version necessarily, because the pace is going to probably be off. But it's going to help you start to really slow down and move into the visceral, direct experience, not your meta-analysis of what's already happened or the meaning that you've already made after having spent 50 years in therapy trying to figure this question out. The reader has not spent 50 years in therapy with you trying to figure out the answer to the question. The reader signed on to go on that journey with you as you continue to explore the depth of that question. So the 5 senses and 5 sentences exercise is really a helpful one for slowing down, stopping, going in, and trying to figure out where the heart of the movement of the piece might be for you. If you approach it too intellectually, like with most things, you're going to start to get tripped up. I had a thought, and because I'm not an expert video person, I don't know how to stop this and go back and edit it, so you're going to have to listen to me ramble for just a minute while I try to find it. The major dramatic question is not about some large universal thing. So it is connected to theme, but it is not the theme. So, we'll caution writers very often not to think about the theme in the beginning, because what that often results in is a really abstract story or essay where we're just talking about why peace is important, or excuse me, why love is important, or why we need to get along, or something very big in general that isn't able to connect with the reader, even though the idea might be perfectly fine. We want to go to the specifics of the story or the essay. We want to get very visceral, move into the direct experience of the moment. And then the direct question, the dramatic question that's connected to that specific piece, then evokes the larger meaning, that universality that allows the reader in. So the specific leads to the universal, and the universal provides that greater theme. So it's a micro to macro, not a macro to a micro kind of a journey. So when you look at your pieces, think about where the conflict is. And for most of you, I'm thinking based on what you've turned in, that a lot of the conflict is more internal, which is, inherently more difficult to dramatize because it's just an internal rumination sort of thing. So look for external things that can help also illustrate that internal struggle and movement and change. You have to figure out how you're going to place yourself as character on the page at the beginning so that there can be some movement to the end. And so I think one of the challenges for memoirs is that you've already done the work to get the answer and you forget that the reader hasn't done that work already, and you need to put yourself back in the beginning in a way that still is respectful and in awe of that question. And my sense is that you will discover more questions than you think about the piece. Events hang around us for lots of reasons, and if things are still bubbling up with you with energy, then they've got more meaning in there for you. I can't tell you what the meaning of your pieces are. I can tell you whether or not I think that you've communicated a meaning yet, and that's connected again back to that dramatic question, essential question, major dramatic question, whatever kind of terminology you want to work with. It's the reason for the journey. It's the reason for sharing the piece. It's why it matters. I can say at this point for you, move in to your piece, set your preconceptions aside as to where you want to go with it, and follow the piece, scene by scene, visceral moment by visceral moment by visceral moment, and see what's still there that you haven't yet remembered. You might have noticed over the course of the class that as you start to remember things, memory jogs memory, jogs memory, jogs memory. You may think that there's just this one level of remembrance, but there's many, many layers underneath that. And when you spend the time and slow down and go underneath that, you might be really surprised by what you find. So, have a good time. As always, the revisions do not have to be perfect pieces of anything. They're the next level. They're the next evolution of your essay and your question. Everything is a step. So, that's all for now. Have a good day.